All right, call the meeting to order. I think it'd be difficult for us to do a pledge. We'll just say that we do a pledge to our country, and we'll move on to the roll call. Brett, you want to do the roll call, or whoever you have to do it?
Yes.
Supervisor Stika,
I'm here.
Clerk Dreyfus is here, Treasurer DeShane,
Here.
Treasurer DeShane is present, Trustee Jackson,
Here.
Trustee Jackson is present, Trustee Opsmer,
Here.
Trustee Opsmer is present, Trustee Sunland,
Here.
Trustee Sunland is present, and Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski is present. All members are present and accounted for.
Thank you, sir. We now move on to our presentations, and we have introduction of our new Economic Development Director, Mr. Walsh. Are you going to do that for us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. With great pleasure. I know it's been a while and news has been out there, but we're really excited to have Ken Lane join our team. As you know, Mr. Buck left us approximately 6 weeks ago. We had a process that involved 10 members of the community, some board members. And at the end of the day, our planning commission chair, Ken Lane, a resident of the township, former economic development director in Delta Township, has agreed to join our team. He's been with us for the last couple weeks, and we're really excited about it.
Mr. Lane, would you like to say anything to us?
Thanks. Glad to be with you this evening. And I just want to say it's an honor to have been selected to be the Economic Development Director for Meridian Township. I intend to keep the economic development momentum going, and I'm glad to be on board, and I'm looking forward to working with you all moving forward.
Well, we're excited to have you. Have any questions for Mr. Lane?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to the new position.
Thanks.
Okay, we're looking forward to it. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
All right, next one is a presentation on the coronavirus task force. It's an update.
Yep. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. This is Mike Hamill. So, Supervisor Stika, thank you for allowing me to give me an opportunity to just kind of go over some of the things we've done in the township. Done a lot of great things, and obviously we're in a time with a new environment, and things have changed daily, and a lot of sacrifices people have made. But I wanted to thank you, Trustee Jackson, Wazinski, Chief Plaga, Director Perry, Dr. Janadang, Director Yates from Home TV, and Director Givas for the task force we created actually almost 4 weeks ago. It's amazing how time flies.
Yeah.
Since then we've done a lot of planning with Director Perry, Deputy Director Perry, Frank Walsh, myself, and Givas and our M team. Have put a lot of things in place from back March 9th. We probably really never believed that we were going to be in a total shutdown for the most part, with just dealing with key continuity operations type things. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the things that are in place and open up for questions after that. So as of right now, we're pretty much for the most part, a total shutdown. Police and fire and public works are still in operation. Public works on a limited scale, and I'll cover a little bit more on what they're doing as I go forward here. And then we have some key employees that are still working at the Township Hall, just the municipal building, just for key functions, paying bills, processing payments, and payroll and things like that. So some of the precautions that we put in place, all employees that report to work now each day have to have their temperature taken, and a series of questions just to make sure that they're all in good health and we're not passing on anything to any other employees. Real key to public service, police and fire. And then we have really finance and HR spending a lot of time within the buildings. How we have that set up is anybody has a temperature of 100.4 or higher, we send them home. Within police and fire, they'll go to a different direction in regards to potential testing through public health, which we have direct links to. some of the things the police department have put in place that kind of keeps their limited access to people, as well as they're not responding to as many medicals as they have in the past. Keep them safe. They're the following complaints with civil nature they're not responding to. Fraud and identity theft, excuse me, where no suspect is identified. Fraud's not occurring within our jurisdiction. Property crimes with a damage or theft under 1,000. Lost property complaints, private property accidents, and harassing complaints. Here in the fire department, we've been spending a lot of time working on a response plan to limit access to potentially exposed patients. So, police, fire, and public works, the last thing we want is to have any employees infected where we start losing staff. We do have things in place with our partners that we can rely on them if we do lose staff. But we've acquired quite a few N95 masks and other things, and actually nicely, a lot of donations from our citizens, which is really nice to see. So again, as this pandemic continues to increase, police and fire and public works have reached out to our partners so we have people that can support us if needed. Public works, basically employees are interacting with one another on a daily basis by creating smaller weekly teams to handle critical sewer and water functions or emergency repairs. And they'll continue to do that. They're going to limit all in-home interactions for utility customers unless it's an emergency situation. All water shutoffs that occurred previous to this situation have been or are going to be turned back on. One of the things that's really key from public service, please do not flush flushable wipes down the toilet. This causes many problems, or the pipes and the pumps as the water is moved through at the treatment plant. So please do not flush your flushable wipes down the toilet. It does cause problems, contrary to what the labels tell you. One of the things that I really want to say is, the community has really stepped up. They've given us a lot of good feedback. I know this is trying times for everybody, being stuck at home, having kids that are not in school. But we've gotten a lot of nice feedback, a lot of community citizens that have requested to help in any way possible. We've some different areas like Meals on Wheels and things like that they can go, volunteer and help out with. And again, with some of the donations they have given us. Additionally, with home TV at Brandy, we've done a great job with trying to send out a lot of information as we receive it, just to keep the citizens notified of the daily changes from the CDC to public health to even our state and even locally what we're doing in the township. And we did some Google presentations with Chief Plog and I and Frank and Director Mr. Perry, and we plan on doing more just to continue to keep our citizens notified of what we're doing. That's really all I have. Thank you for allowing me to give you that update, and I look forward to talking more.
Well, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for the chief?
I have a question for you, Chief. How is the health and safety of our firemen out there making these calls on a daily basis?
They're doing good. We've isolated. So what we did is we have our dorm here. We've moved a couple of the beds into the community room. So we've done a lot of spacing here. We've limited some of our meetings. Our run volume's down about a third, which is good. People aren't going to the hospitals unless they really need to. And, the call volume at the hospitals are down other than people self-presenting for COVID and other things like that. So they're doing really well. They're surviving. It's the unknown, still the nervousness there, but they're doing a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, again, thank you, Chief. And with that, we'll move on to the citizens addressing agenda and non-agenda items. This will be a little different, a little different way of doing it because we're all here online. But still, you're limited to 3 minutes. You will be cut off after 3 minutes. So please try to watch your clock or your watch as you're going. And I don't really have a list at this point, but I have people on the screen. And the first one I have on my screen is someone named Gary. So if Gary's here to do public comment, I call on Gary. You got to we can't hear you. You're muted right
And you need your first and last name.
Hang on, trustee Stika, Gary's still muted. We're unmuting him right now.
I just did it.
Okay.
This is Gary DeRoe from Wooden Skate and West Grand River, and I'm only here because Peter told me to be here.
Okay, you have nothing else to add today?
Well, nothing to add. You're doing your final vote tonight, and I assume it's positive like it was last time, and so I thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, who do we have next? Can't really read some of these names here. Dominic?
Board members, I don't have any public comment. I'm just here to address any questions or that you guys have regarding our agenda item.
Okay, which one? Just
It is the 1614-1622 Grand River.
okay.
Supervisor, point of order.
Yes.
Can I just request that you could make a statement that people don't need to check in with us, because this isn't like we're checking in at a meeting. Only speak if you want to speak on a topic, because I think people are just feeling like they need to say that they're at the meeting.
It's my fault, Brett. I'm calling on them because I've got their names on the screen and I don't have an actual list of who wants to speak. So I'm just asking each one if there's somebody here to speak.
Can everybody just hear you ask the general question? Does anybody have a comment to make, rather than asking every person by name?
There's one more person on my screen. Do you have a comment? Starts with an A-M-M.
Hi, this is Omar Al-Kafaji. I'm with W Investment Holdings. I'm Dominic McCall's partner. This is here for the Medical Center. Thank you.
And Supervisor Stika, point of order. Sorry, this is Stephen, and we're going to give out a telephone number. If someone wanted to make a comment from the public, we can take a telephone call at 517-349-1232. If you want to remind people that they're limited to their 3 minutes, and you have that beautiful commentary that you go through telling people that the public comment is designed for facilitating input from the public, but the board meeting is for facilitating board action. If you want to give that instruction, we'll wait for phone calls for about 90 seconds just to make sure no one wants to call in. Again, the telephone number 517-349-1232. Thank you, sir, and sorry to interrupt.
That's fine. That's something we should have ironed out a little bit better, I guess, in advance, but we'll know better next time. The public comment is limited to 3 minutes. We call upon people, ask them to identify who they are, name, address, etc., what topic they're going to speak on, and then give us 3 minutes on that topic or topics. And the topic should hopefully relate to township business, not their own matters. And they should be addressing the board as a whole, not any individuals, and not any individuals who might be tuning in or watching or be on the screen. And we'll look forward to having people make comments that are not rude, but appropriate. And hopefully there'll be somebody calling in. If not, there'll be a second chance for comments near the end of the meeting. So if somebody's watching and they want to make a public comment and it doesn't come to them right now, at the end of the agenda, there'll be one more opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Supervisor Stika. We have no callers at this time, but that number will remain open throughout the entire meeting. 517-349-1232. And excuse my interruption.
No problem. Okay, we now go to the Township Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I really just want to focus tonight on what's transpired with our team in the last couple of weeks. I want to thank our paramedics. They're responding every day to what could be COVID patients. They're doing a phenomenal job, and I appreciate the leadership of Chief Hamill and the department. Our police department, I implore all seniors out there who need special care, special attention. It was just last week we went to a home where the senior citizen had dropped her remote control to the TV and didn't have the ability to pick that remote control up. Our police department responded and assisted that resident. That's the type of police department we have. That's the type of service we offer. If senior citizens want to get involved with Senior Watch, I know Supervisor Stike has been pushing this on social media the last couple of weeks. 4800, 853-4800. And that will get you into the police desk where you get involved with our senior cares program. Our communications team under the leadership of Randy Yates has been vital the last couple of weeks. We've had social media engagement almost every day out to our public. Some of those have been shared 30 or 40 times. Our public works team, keeping our public water and sewer operations going, which is a very, very important right now for our community. And of course, as has been mentioned by Chief Hamill, we've addressed the issue of water service to all, regardless of payment history. I also don't want to forget our payroll team. They've been in here working while others are home, making sure that our employees are taken care of. Our finance team in here paying the bills. We have a lot of bills to a lot of companies. Those companies have employees and they're expecting to be paid. And so we're going with the due care to make sure we take care of that. And finally, thank you to the task force. Chief Hamill mentioned all the members of that team, and I really appreciate that. And finally, to Trustee Opsimer, who's gone out of his way in the last couple of weeks to make sure that we're engaged with everything that's going on at the state level with his position at the state. It's been vital to us as we move along. So thank you to everyone. We'll continue to communicate with our residents through all kinds of social media and make sure that our response during this entire process is not just good or great, it's an elite response, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Any questions for the manager from any board members? Okay, Danny. All right, we will now go on to the board member reports of activities and announcements. Before we get into the general ones, we have the election report from Clerk Dreyfus.
Thank you, Supervisor. So these are the election results for the March 10th presidential primary. Excuse me. Sorry. This is the election results for the March 10th presidential primary. I'm going to go through and just give the top two vote getters for both the Republican nomination and the Democratic nomination. In the Democratic side, Joe Biden received 6,250 votes, and Bernie Sanders received 4,252 votes. There were a total of 12,003 votes cast in the Democratic presidential primary. On the Republican side, Donald Trump received 2,072 votes, and Bill Weld received 50 votes, for a total of 2,326 votes on the Republican nomination side. There were a total, hold on a second. There were 5 proposals. The Potter Park operational millage passed 11,125 to 3,504. Ingham County Trails and Parks passed 11,293 to 3,349 noes. Ingham County Health Services passed 11,166 yes votes to 3,078 no. Ingham County Intermediate School District proposal passed 10,607 to 3,560. And the CATA proposal passed 9,828 to 4,360. That had the smallest margins, even though they were significant. So in terms of total number of votes cast, we have 32,016 registered voters. We had 14,642 voters. That produced a 45.7% voter turnout. There were 7,171 absentee voter ballots cast for a total of a 49% AV turnout. That is the election report of the results. The Ingham County Board of Canvassers met, and the election results were certified, and so the election is officially concluded. At this point, that is the election aspect for the March 10th election. I have to report that we have an upcoming filing deadline for the August 4th primary election. All Meridian Township elected positions are up for election on the August 4th election. And all 5 Parks Commission elected offices are up for election in the August 4th primary as well. There is an April 21st filing deadline. If any Meridian Township resident wishes to run for these offices, there are 2 ways you can get on the ballot. One is by submitting a nominating petition with between 50 and 100 signatures. Given the circumstances, that is not recommended, and most candidates are not going to utilize that choice. The most common way to do it in this situation will be to pay a $100 filing fee, which would be refunded if the candidate wins the nomination in the August 4th election. Again, the filing deadline is April 21st. The paperwork is available at the clerk's office. Anybody interested can contact the clerk's office to receive the nominating forms if they wish, the affidavit that they need to complete, and to pay the filing fee. And an appointment needs to be made since the building is closed. An appointment would need to be made in order to be able to do that. If you wanted to do that before we're scheduled to open on April 14th. But given circumstances, and we don't know that, I encourage anyone who's interested to call the clerk's office at 853-4300, and we can set up an appointment to make sure we give you the forms that you need. And if you have any questions about any of the positions, we can provide you with a description of what any of those positions are entailed. And in addition, any candidate that wants to be nominated and provides that information and is by April 21st, they have 3 days to withdraw their name if they want to have their name withdrawn. So that would be April 24th at 4 p.m. They can have their name taken off the ballot if they so choose. That is the election report.
Any questions from board members of the clerk? The election report? Let's see any hands. Okay. Our next report then is the treasurer's report.
Thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen here. It says it's disabled. If you'd open up your board packet, page 2, right after the agenda, you'll see the treasurer's report. And let me go through that with the board. Moving on to page 3, collections in 2019 for delinquent personal property taxes. And for 2019 and 2020 are around 38,000, with around 86,000 left in delinquent personal property tax. That's a number that has been around for a while. We've reduced it over the years. The personal property tax is going by the wayside, but they still that remains on our books, if you will. Our 2019 tax year collection was $109,204.03. On that same page, you'll see the distribution of that money and where it was distributed. Ingham County was the largest recipient at $20,174,000 change. These are typical numbers. They went up slightly as our assessed value went up, but no real huge surge there, with the exception of our road millage, which collected as expected around $4 million. Turn to the next page, you'll see our current fixed investments. And we are fortunate these are fixed investments. You'll see $5,793,000 and some change in our general fund, distributed over 7 different banks. We keep our money distributed into lots of banks. That provides us with security should any one of those banks have a problem. All of the banks we invest in are top notch. We do a lot of vetting before we invest any of the township money in any banks. You can see these have maturity dates starting in September and going out as far as 2027. Likewise, our land preservation, our road improvement and water monies are also invested in longer term investments that mature between 2021 and 2025. So we get $11,060,000 in fixed investments currently. Next page, you'll see the current non-fixed investments by the type. The first GF is our general fund, 3.5 million. This is our ongoing money that we operating money. Moving down, you'll see our land preservation, and you'll see water fund, roads, road improvement, and other funds there for a total of 8,418,000. Look at the column here, particularly the top where it shows the current rate of return on these funds. 1.72 for Michigan class, Horizon 155. This was dated as of the end of February. I'm sad to report that these rates have really tanked since then. Effectively, the Fed has lowered interest rates to zero. And our banks have notified us that the amount they're paying us on these shorter term funds will go close to zero very soon as well. Good news is we didn't invest a lot. We didn't budget a lot for this. I think we have $100,000 in investment returns. Last year, we brought in close to $300,000. So we had an extra $200,000 that we were able to use to add to our capital projects and other things that we did. We put into 2020's budget. We're not going to have that this year. We're going to see significantly lower returns on our investments because interest rates have just gone through the floor. This could have impacted our road bonding. As you may remember, we bonded for our roads in November. We essentially received around all 3 years worth of the road monies at once, approximately $12 million. We worked with Baird, who has been our bond investment, about where that money can be put legally, what kind of return we can get on it. And we've now invested that money in different CDs, and we will get as much back in return as we're paying in bond interest, which is good. If we'd waited much longer, we would have gotten a whole lot less, because in early March, bond rates went from 1.5% to effectively 0.5 to 0.75%. So we would have lost some money there. So we took action before rates crashed 3 and 4 weeks ago.
Anything else, Treasurer?
That's it. Any questions on our current investments?
Questions for the Treasurer?
All right, thank you.
Okay. We will now move on to other board members for reports or activities or announcements.
Yes, I have one real quick. I just wanted to go over, most residents are probably aware at this point, but CATA has suspended all fixed route service, and they have instituted an emergency curb-to-curb service, which is only for essential medical appointments, work, and grocery store visits. Customers in need of a free curb-to-curb ride can call 517-999-2549. The hours listed for calls and service are on CATA's website, cata.org. I won't list all of those, but there is service Monday through Sunday, and the call hours vary on Saturday and Sunday. And if you're in need of a ride prior to 6 a.m., you should reserve your ride a day in advance. And so this is more of an on-demand service. You can get same-day rides.
Gotcha.
That's all I have right now.
Any other board members? It's not like we've been out doing other meetings. Just checking the other screen. Nothing from Mr. Dreyfus. Okay. All righty. Then we will move on to the approval of the agenda. I will mention a couple changes to the agenda. We have an additional 12F, which is a resolution supporting the actions taken by Governor Whitmer in this current crisis. And I'm going to ask that 9B when we get be moved down to 12G. So I'm going to propose some amendments to the minutes. Other than that, we also are going to take off the agenda 13B. They asked not to be on the agenda today. They couldn't make the meeting for various reasons. So with that, we have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes.
So moved.
Moved by Opsimer, supported.
Support.
What did I think I heard you, Shane. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I have to check the other screen. You're muted, Brett, but I can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, did you say aye?
No, I didn't. I was muted, unfortunately. Item 16, I have item 16 on my agenda, which is closed session. Is that?
Oh, yeah, that's also coming up. I'm sorry, you're correct. But that will not be part of the agenda either.
So just for the record, the closed session has been removed from the agenda.
Right. Along with 13B, and then we're modifying 12 to have an F and a G.
Got it. I vote yes.
All right, everyone vote yes then?
Yes.
All right, agenda is adopted as changed. Okay, the first thing is the consent agenda. We have the communications. We have the bills. We have authority to open account. We have membership in the Michigan Water Wastewater Response Network, known as My Warn. And we have the ratification of the full-time paramedic firefighter appointment. The motion? Ms. Jackson?
Move for adoption of the consent agenda as presented.
I move adoption of the consent agenda as amended.
Yeah, she had her hand up before you said anything, Phil.
Support.
I'll take it you're seconding it, Phil.
Yes.
It's a little hard work with all these screens, and then Brett's on another page, so it's kind of hard to get in there. Okay. I assume there's no discussion. All those in favor say aye. Oh, no, we have to do a roll call. Do a roll call.
Just the bills.
Yes. Roll call, Brett.
Supervisor Steka,
Yes.
we had discussed before we vote on this modification to the minutes of the March 3rd meeting.
Yeah, I already mentioned that.
Okay, I missed that part. Thank you.
It's B is being moved to G of 12.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to the roll call.
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
trustee Sundland. Trustee Sundland, you have to need to unmute if you're there.
He's unmuted now. We're adopting 9.
I don't think I'm muted.
No, you're not.
Trustee
You're fine.
Sundland, your vote?
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
clerk Dreyfus votes yes. Treasurer DeShane
Yes.
and Supervisor Steka.
I vote yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We're now moving on to 12, the action items, because we have no 10 or 11 today. First one is A, rezoning number 19100 Duro, 1259 Grand River Avenue, RR2 and RRA2, C2, with, I believe, some stipulations put forward by the applicant. And this is a final adoption. Is there a motion? Ms. Jackson?
I move to adopt the resolution for final adoption of ordinance number 2020-04 pursuant to rezoning petition number 19100 to rezone 1.487 acres at 1259 Grand River Avenue from RR Rural Residential and RRA Single Family Suburban Estates to C2 Commercial with conditions voluntarily offered by the applicant.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Opsimer. Is there discussion, Ms. Jackson?
I would only add that this is a rezoning that allows the owner to continue to use his property as it is currently being used, and also allows him to protect that property appropriately. The conditions that have been offered is that there will be no drive-through windows, no fast food restaurants, bars, taverns, lounges, brew pubs, gas stations, and the hours open for business, no hours open for business after 12 a.m.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have something to say? Mr. Dreyfus.
Thank you. I think this is an example where Meridian Township is showing that it's responsive to an individual that had a specific need, a resident who had concerns about the way the zoning impacts his ability to maintain the property and to be able to build on the legacy that he's developed at that property. And I think that this was a good example of people working together and coming up with, within the framework of our ordinances, coming up with a really good workable approach that allowed him to get what he wants, but safeguard the concerns, particularly neighbors and people who live nearby would be most concerned about. So it makes me proud and very happy when we're able to have, it's a trite saying when we say win-win, but in this case, we did have a win-win situation, I believe. I think everybody would feel good about it. So it's nice to get that. And we hope we can get those in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Duchesne.
But agree with the clerk on those comments. It does show us working together. We've worked for a long time in this township to overcome this notion that we're anti-small business, that we discourage solid commercial operations from coming to the township. This is a great example of us being very flexible with existing commercial operation, helping them to recreate themselves in a different format, yet still in a way that's in harmony with the neighbors, neighborhoods around it. We are open as a township. We do welcome small businesses. We need those businesses here. And this rezoning is an example of our flexibility. I'm proud to vote for this.
Any other board members need to speak on this? Mr. Officer.
Yeah, I just want to thank the applicant for his patience on this. And I just had a question for Mark and Peter. I guess it would be for Mark because he's on the call. So Mark, obviously with the legacy of this property, some of the original documentation on the special exemption that was kind of carved out for this property has been lost to time. Given our digitizing of records today and everything else, do you feel as though future boards will have adequate information on what is really a very unique rezoning?
I think we can address that if those issues come up. We had a pretty good record, I thought, on this property. It's been non-conforming for a long time because of the commercial use, and it's been zoned for residential purposes. This makes it conforming for the use. Now, the structure we had mentioned may be non-conforming because of setbacks, but those are things that, depending on what happens to the property in the future, the applicant can go back in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals and get variances for setbacks. But he could use it as is right now for commercial once this is approved.
Thank you. And I appreciate you and Peter coming up with a very black and white manner of offering an idea or a concept for a condition that worked with the intent that I had asked for. So thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mazinski.
Just confirming that currently the building has to stay as is, although can change occupants unless they go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a non-conforming or a change of building, correct?
Mark, you want to answer that?
Director, please.
Yeah, it could be used for the commercial uses as it's been set out, so it would have to meet all the requirements. It's limited on the number of parking spaces in those types of things. So yes, it could. But if they ever wanted to add on to the building or remove part of the building and build something else, they probably would come to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The main issue is setbacks.
Thank you.
Any other hands? Okay, so we need a roll call vote, clerk.
Treasurer Duchesne.
Yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Supervisor Stika.
Yes.
And Clerk Dreyfus votes yes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Mr. First name's Gary.
Giroux.
And I want to thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our next item is the municipal building HVAC replacement bids, and we'll ask Mr. Perry to address us on that before we move further. Mr. Perry. You're muted, Mr. Perry. You have to unmute. There you go.
Should come through. Good evening, Supervisor Steichen, members of the board. In an effort to complete Goal G of the 2020 action plan, we solicited bids for the replacement of the HVAC system. As the board's aware, we had money in the previous year's budget for the engineering work that was completed. And again, this was the direct construction, essentially the general trades, the mechanical and the electrical. We received 3 bids on the general trades, one on the mechanical, excuse me, 2 on the mechanical, 1 on the electrical. We did our research, our background checks on all those, and we're currently recommending that we award the general trades to Mallory Building for $98,900, the mechanical to Gunthorpe Plumbing and Heating, an amount of $1,330,300, and the electrical to Centennial Electric for $83,700. The majority of that obviously goes to the mechanical work, which is really the nuts and bolts of the HVAC replacement project.
Is there a motion? Clerk Dreyfus.
I had a question.
Oh, you want to do the motion first, or?
I think the question could be a part of, before we make the motion. I just had a question that talked about this. It said also additional project costs of $606,000. I just wanted to elaborate.
Sure. So the total project budget is $2.2 million. So the direct construction work is $1,512,900, but those additional costs are about $450,000 for the construction management portion of it. So that's the firm we've hired to actually oversee the construction management of it.
What firm is that?
That is Fishback. Yep. And then we have a budget of $50,000 for bonding, insurance, permits, and asbestos removal. And then we have $100,000 of contingency. So ideally, we won't use the entire $2.2 million. As the project proceeds, we may have to, do some additional asbestos abatement or less. But anyways, it deals directly with the general trades, the mechanical, and the electrical portion of it.
All right, let's get a motion then. Mr. Abser. You're muted. You're muted.
My fault. I move to authorize Deputy Township Manager Perry to proceed with the municipal building HVAC replacement project and accept the bids of Mallory Building for general trades, Gunthorpe Plumbing and Heating for mechanical services, and Centennial Electric for electric services in the amount of $1,512,900 for direct construction services.
Is there support, Mr. Treasurer DeShane?
Support that motion.
All right. Discussion, Mr. Abser?
Nope, I appreciate all of Derek's due diligence on this, getting this RFP completed and getting this project underway. Obviously, it's going to be interesting given the current pandemic and how that may impact our construction schedule. But I appreciate all of the deputy managers' work on this.
Follow-up question, Mr. Dreyfus.
This is just a question for Derek. Did for the construction firm Fishback, was that part of a bid process as well? Was there other bidders for that component?
So for the engineering services, we have, for the last 5 years, we've had 3 engineering firms that we did a selective professional process. So we kind of rotate different engineering firms. But there was a competitive bid process, although it's not a bid per se, professional selection, an RFQ that was done several years ago to select multiple engineering firms. We kind of rotate through those.
So that cost is to oversee the what we just are gonna vote on right now. The $450,000 is to oversee these other areas, these other So like the electric, the plumbing and so forth, that's what that's for?
So the $450,000 is the cost to basically hire construction management service. That's what our bills would be to them to actually oversee the project. We don't have that expertise in-house to understand how to put together that HVAC system to make sure the contractors are doing what they're supposed to be doing on a daily basis. They will actually supervise them on a daily basis to make sure that the engineering drawings are being followed and everything.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, need to understand what their role was. Thank you.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just comment generally that you can go with a general contractor, which then you bid out for, and then they hire the various subcontractors, et cetera. Or you can do this system where you hire a construction management company, and then you bid out these individual contracts, and then that construction management company is going to be in charge of the project, do what they're supposed to do, when they do, et cetera. Mr. Duchesne.
I want to thank Assistant Manager Perry and Manager Walsh for their estimation of what this would cost. I'm glad we're a little bit, these came in a little under rather than over, that we're 80,528 underneath what we expected is good news. We're likely to have much tighter budgets in the years ahead, and it's very good that we're going to be under budget on this project. And so good job from a budgeting perspective, estimating perspective on your part. Give us a budget number that we're within and pretty darn close to. So again, good work.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Ms. Jackson.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Perry about how local these companies are.
Good question.
Yes, Centennial Electric's out of Charlotte. Gunthorpe is local, I believe Lansing's where their office is. And Mallory Building actually is a firm out of Hazlet, so actually in the township.
And Fishbeck?
Fishbeck has a local office in Lansing, but they're throughout the state.
Thank you.
Their main office is Grand Rapids.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk Traffus.
A follow-up question to that as well. Do we know if there's prevailing wage being paid in all different facets of this?
Prevailing wage is a component of this contract, yes.
Okay, anyone else? We're ready to vote, then we need a roll call.
Trustee Opsimer.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Clerk Dreyfus votes yes. Treasurer Duchesne.
Yes.
Supervisor Stika.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to 12C, the resolution celebrating Women's History Month. Something we did 2 years ago, but we failed to do last year. And the month is now over. Today's the last day of the month. Through no fault of ours, we're adopting this. But I think it's still worthy of adoption because it expresses our esteem and respect for the role that women play in this country, in our government, our history, our success in every way. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to adopt or to approve the resolution celebrating Women's History Month.
Support.
Supported by, well, Wazinski beat you to the hand up, but
Okay.
you get her chance.
It's appropriate.
Any comments, or we just go with the vote here? I think we just go with the vote. Yes, Ms. Wazinski?
So I just want to note that in Meridian, I think working for diversity has been working because on average, we're only about 20% of people in politics are women. So here on our board, we're 3 out of 7. So we're not doing too bad in Meridian. So it makes me a proud board member in Meridian Township.
Good. Okay. Ms. Jackson?
Yes, I would just like to note, I assume we're not going to read the resolution tonight, but that the resolution is well written. It commemorates contributions of all women in this country and all aspects of this country. and all aspects of life in this country. And so I commend the writer and support the resolution.
Well, I have to say I cheated. I took what I did 2 years ago and just made sure it was up to date and accurate. So I guess I was the writer, but it was a long time.
Okay.
All right. Checking the other screen. Okay, then we'll take a vote. Oh, Mr. Duchesne.
I too would like to say I wholeheartedly endorse this motion. But we do have a fair amount of diversity in our board. And this board exists because of women, because women make up a majority of the electorate in the Democratic primary. And all of us are here because enough women voters thought we were good enough to serve on the board, and therefore we're here. So we all owe a lot to the women of this township for their support.
Very good. All right. Okay, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hear none, 7-0. We now go on to the Newton Road Sanitary Sewer SAD number 54, resolution number 4. And I assume we're going to hear from Mr. Perry on this. You move screens on me. There you are. Okay.
There I am. I'm here. I'm still here. In the summer of 2019, a special assessment district was established to provide gravitary sanitary sewer to 2 properties along Newton Road. They're actually just north of Lake Lansing Road. Since that time, construction's been completed this summer. It's actually in action right now, being utilized. And the next step in the process is to adopt Resolution 4, which then sets a public hearing, the second public hearing in the special assessment process.
All right. Ms. Jackson.
I move to approve Newton Road Public Sanitary Sewer Improvement Special Assessment District number 54, resolution number 4, which files the proposed final special assessment roll with the township clerk and sets the date for a public hearing on May 5, 2020.
Very good.
I have a procedural question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just the date is set for April 14th. So that's because
we got yesterday a May 5.
Should be an updated memorandum.
And she stated May 5 in her statement of it.
Okay, I have the old version in mind. Okay.
Yeah.
With the motion,
So we needed a second. Did we get a second?
I support the motion. Seconded.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay. You want to call the roll on it?
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths?
So you said May 5th, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
Treasurer Deshane,
Yes.
Clerk Dreyfus votes yes. Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We are now going on to item E under 12, which is the 2020 to 2024 CCLP Meridian Township Police Supervisory Unit Tentative Agreement. Mr. Walsh, you want to come in?
Thank you. Certainly, Mr. Supervisor. The agreement that you have before you this evening mirrors what we talked about approximately a month ago now, maybe 6 weeks ago. It covers the command unit of the police department, which includes the sergeants, lieutenant, the assistant chief, captain, if we had that position at this time. It's approximately 9 to 10 members. It's a 5-year agreement, exactly as we talked about before, 2% per year, and a $200 educational bonus increase per employee. And that's been ratified by the command unit and is before you this evening for consideration of this 5-year agreement.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Deshane.
I move to approve the 2020 to 2024 collective bargaining agreement as tentatively agreed to and further ratified by the CCLP Meridian Township Police Supervisory Unit.
Is there a second?
Second,
Who was that?
Kathy.
I flipped screens for a minute, so I didn't see that. Okay, seconded by Ms. Sunland. Any need for discussion?
Just like to thank the manager for his, and Joyce Marks, our HR director, for their good work in getting this negotiated. Am I correct? This is one of our 3 public safety agreements that we've now settled with, Manager Walsh?
It is. I mean, this is a group that is subject to 312, which allows this bargaining group to go to binding arbitration, which is a very expensive and lengthy process, which you all know. And this stops short of doing this, spending all the resources on that. And I think if I was to make a forecast, I think there'll be more than one, more than just this agreement coming to you in the near future.
Very good. Anybody else want to comment or have a question? Okay, then we need a roll call vote on this.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
Clerk Dreyfus votes yes. Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, congratulations to that unit and to Mr. Walsh and Joyce and everyone else involved. Great job. Good to have a contract in place, and especially for a long period of time, like 5 years. We won't have to come back and look at it for a while. Okay, we now go on to 12F, which is the resolution backing or supporting our governor in her actions with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic that's been put forward by Mr. DeShane. You want to make this motion and then tell us about it?
Sure. If I could, I'd like to read the motion. All of you should have received a copy of it. Let me try and share it to the screen. Okay.
Ah, magic.
Isn't it great that having technology work the way it should?
I wouldn't know what you did or how you did it. That's good.
Someone in the back room turned down my ability to share a document. So as we do more of these meetings, I'm sure we'll get better at it. This is a resolution in support of Governor Whitmer and the state of Michigan's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas Governor Gretchen Whitmer and the state departments have been among the leading states in taking action to protect the health and safety of its citizens, including declaring a state of emergency, closing Michigan schools, and issuing a stay-at-home order to rigorously flatten the curve of the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas amidst these unprecedented circumstances, Governor Whitmer has also activated state governments like never before to expand our healthcare capacity, to ensure Michigan has enough acute care beds, bring medical providers out of retirement to ensure we have capacity to care for those in need, meet an unprecedented demand for enrolling residents in unemployment benefits, increasing unemployment benefits assistance by $600 per week, and expand it to include impacted residents, expanding and increasing food assistance, addressing potential blood shortages, providing financial assistance to small businesses that have been adversely impacted, working with Attorney General Dana Nessel to address price gouging, halting evictions and utility shutoffs, streamlining water connections across the state, and much, much more. Whereas on March 26th, with the Michigan experiencing the 4th highest confirmed cases of COVID-19, Governor Whitmer sent a major disaster declaration request to President Donald Trump to ensure the state of Michigan was able to meet the needs of residents during these unprecedented circumstances, stating, while the people of Michigan and businesses of the great state of Michigan have shown incredible resilience and cooperation throughout this difficult time, we cannot weather this storm alone. And whereas while enduring rude and baseless attacks from President Trump, Governor Whitmer remained focused and steadfast in her effort to protect the health and safety of our residents of the state of Michigan and to address one of the largest coronavirus hotspots across the world in the city of Detroit and Wayne County. And whereas on March 29th, President Trump granted a major disaster disaster declaration for Michigan. And whereas Governor Whitmer has been working hard with Michigan's manufacturing industry to increase production of testing kits, N95, respirator masks, shields, ventilators, hand sanitizer, and other critical supplies, unlike anything we have seen since Detroit became known as the arsenal of democracy during World War II. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian in Ingham County, Michigan, that the members of the Meridian Township Board express their heartfelt gratitude to Governor Gretchen Whitmer for her tireless support.
Tireless and effective leadership.
Tireless, effective leadership in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic and the extreme threat it poses to the health and life of the residents of Meridian Township and the state of Michigan.
Support.
Okay, that was supported by Ms. Jackson. And I think we could take it off the screen so I can see people. Hopefully. There we go. All right. Do you want to say anything about it, Mr. DeShane?
We all know these are really unprecedented and scary times, and I think it's very, very important for us to stand by our governor, who's been very courageous, and she has been tireless in her efforts and advocacy for all of us here in Michigan. Our numbers are skyrocketing here in Michigan. We do have one of the worst hotspots in the world in Wayne County and Detroit, and we are well led by Governor Whitmer, and the legislature have also been very active in this process. And I also want to thank Trustee Opsimer for drafting this resolution. He provided a lot of the meat of this resolution, knowing exactly what's going on in the state. And I would hand it off to him to discuss maybe a little bit more about what is happening here in the state to respond to this crisis.
Anyone else? Okay. And we need a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 7-0. Okay, we now come to our minutes, which have been moved down to 12G. And I'm going to move that we adopt the minutes with my amendment that I proposed that I distributed earlier today, which is a change for 13A, a different language. 13A. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Mr. Okay, I watched the meeting, and this is a discussion I think that was hard to get down on paper, but by carefully going through and trying to get it down to just the nub of each point, I think I was successful in doing that. I realized that the time the original minutes were written, we were under a big time crunch and other issues with the election. But I think this better states it than the original language. Anyone have any comments, questions? Mr. Dreyfus, did you see that? I sent it out earlier.
For some reason, I have not seen it, but I trust you. You generally have good editing, so I'll go with whatever you suggested.
It's a little bit longer than what you had, but I tried to keep it as short as I could, and it summarizes all the points that were made, I believe. All right. All right. Then all those in favor of adopting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We adopt the minutes as amended.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the previous motion. We didn't catch the second.
I seconded that.
Mr. Opsimer seconded it.
Thank you. And who first did it?
The supervisor did.
I did. I made the motion.
Thank you.
Since I was doing the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. We now move on to our discussion items. The first one is A, special use permit 19131, the W Investment Holdings. Mark still on?
Yep. This is a request to locate a provisioning center at 1614 Grand River Avenue. The site is east of Central Park Drive and on the north side of Grand River. It's in overlay area 5 of our medical marijuana ordinance. The ordinance does allow by special use permit for provisioning center subject to the final approval at the township board level. The site is 2.4 acres in size. It's zoned C2 that's commercial, and it has 150 feet on Grand River Avenue. Applicant is proposing to construct a new building of approximately 4,000 square feet on the site to accommodate provisioning center. And we did provide you with site plans for this development and also building elevations. One thing to mention, this is on the far eastern portion of the property next to Sparrow Clinic. The driveway, as shown, is on the far eastern part of this parcel. That came out of a traffic study that was required to be done. That was the optimal location for the driveway. You also see the service drive. That's a requirement of our zoning ordinance that they provide that service drive along and parallel to Grand River Avenue, and that will continue to the east as the property develops in the future on that location. As far as the final site plan, if the special use permit's approved, that will be a staff function. But currently, as shown, the building meets all front, side, and rear setbacks. Lot coverage is at 40%. That's the hard surface. That's the parking. And the building itself, it could be as high as 70% under the zoning category. And it does meet the required setback from churches, school, or childcare centers. At its closest point, it's over 1,500 feet from Faith Lutheran Church. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this, and they've recommended approval of the special use permit. And I know the applicant is also listening tonight for this if you have any questions for them.
Okay, I think we have two people here from the applicant instead of call. All right. Board members, discussion. Mrs. Wasinski. You're muted. Got to unmute.
Dang it, you think I'd be good at this after
You got to watch that little red
constant meetings. I have a couple questions just to clarify. So one thing I was just wondering about is the traffic study indicates there's an additional 1,372 vehicle trips over a 24-hour period. And I know that area is somewhat congested, especially being Hamilton, that cut through of Hamilton without a light there. There was some mention of timing of lights, and I'm just wondering if, I don't know if it's Director Kiesbach or Deputy Director Perry, to kind of explain the thoughts and or the proposal for those timing of lights and how that might work.
There's right now, if you remember, Planning Commission and the Transportation Commission jointly requested MDOT to look at that signal at Central Park and Grand River, especially left turn movements coming from Central Park onto Grand River. And they've agreed to do that. I don't know if Gary has heard anything more. I know with all the situation, it may be delayed on that study to look at the signalization for that intersection, but that will improve the flow through that if that signal with changes.
Okay.
So the intersection's been approved for a signal upgrade. It'll just be an issue of now MDOT budgeting for that improvement and then actually installing the signal. But as Mark alluded to, with the additional constraints of the COVID-19, all the budgets are being constrained at the state level. So when we'll see that actual implementation of that signal change.
Okay, great. Just thank you. The other question I have is regarding wetlands. So from what I read is there is 2 regulated wetlands on the particular parcel, and that neither one of those were going to be disturbed and also will be protected during construction.
Right. Yeah, they're outside of all the required setbacks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mrs. Jackson.
Mark, in my reading of one of the maps, I get the impression that the drive from Grand River is a gravel drive as opposed to asphalt. Is that correct?
There may be, there was a house and some other buildings on that site. It may have had a gravel driveway. Our ordinance would require for this improvement, the new building and the parking would have to be hard surface. It would have to be either asphalt or concrete.
Okay. And one other thing, so at the I guess that's the northeast side of the parking lot or near the center, there's a stub. Is that a stub or is that a trash?
There's a trash receptacle area behind the building. There's a proposal. The applicant also has the property directly to the east of this, and you'll see, they have future plans for development of the site, this vacant piece, and they are going to do a drive to connect this. And then connect to the service drive. So they only have one driveway on Grand River. The other site will all be served through the service drive that's shown.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dreyfus. You're muted. You're muted. There you go.
Okay. It seems like there's some nice little bit of landscaping features around the wetlands with some trees and all, right? And the driveway is going to edge its way through the two.
That's a question for you.
Yes.
So is it going to be an attempt to try to, is it going to be building mostly the building footprint and the parking area is going to be in the cleared area?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is what I'm asking, is most of the actual construction then going to be in an area that's already cleared?
Yes.
So I think they're going to be able to try to protect most of what's currently there.
Yes.
Great. Good to hear. I think that's kind of nice because some of the concerns residents have had, maybe misinformation or their own concerns about what it could be. This actually, with having a little bit of some of that nice natural landscaping there, I just think could alleviate some concerns. It just has a nicer look and feel to it.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Director Kieselbach. So Mark, with the stub connections on the service drive out at the front parallel to Grand River, remind me of when the adjacent property owners have to connect. So what would the pediatric clinic have to do to their parking lot in order to require a connection? And conversely, if the applicant or if the landowner on the west side develops their site, are they compelled to connect to that service drive?
Yeah, the to the east, we're looking at trying to have that service drive connected to Sparrow Clinic there. And then as the property develops to the east, the service drive would be built at that time and then connect to the former Panera site to the east.
But when do they have to? Just for instance, does Sparrow have to right now?
They would do it at the time of development. So we would push the connection to Sparrow as they develop this site. And then any future connection to the west would be when that vacant site's developed.
So Sparrow is compelled to connect now.
If I can chime in, gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. But I'm sorry.
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry, Dominic Bacall.
They're one of the applicants.
Correct. The Sparrow site is actually elevated higher than ours, and there's a current retaining wall that separates us from them. So we had actually talked to, I believe, Peter about this. It's not really feasible for us to connect to the Sparrow Medical Building, but we are abiding by the ordinance by still putting the stub there, just for future redevelopment of their property. So from what we've been told, I don't think that actual connection is going to happen at the time of our construction with Sparrow's site, but we will put the stub there, I believe, just for future redevelopment of that property if that was to happen, as long as that is still required by you guys.
Mark, is there any obligation on Sparrow?
We can look into that. Yes, there was they put theirs as a requirement, so.
I mean, it would have to be
Yeah, we'd have to look, make sure it fits. Yes,
and is it at a treated area as well?
yes.
So we would be requiring the taking out of some natural vegetation.
Yeah, and we can, yeah, we'll look through that during site plan review if the SUP is approved.
Clerk Travis.
I think I'd like a bigger bird's eye view of the issue of service drives. Is it now a requirement basically everywhere and any new development that service drives under these situations have to be constructed?
It's part of for Grand River Avenue, it's a requirement that the service drive be put in.
Is that a Meridian requirement?
Yes, that's ours requirement. You can see it on both sides of Grand River as you go through, especially in this area, that the idea is that they all connect these drives, so you don't have to go back out onto Grand River each time you go to a different site.
So there's never been exemptions granted, or it's a universal policy, or is it something subject to like an MUPD variance exemption?
It is really, it's not the zoning board of appeals can't grant a use variance. They can grant dimensional variances, and not to install it, I would think is more towards a use variance. So there isn't, unless the board changed the ordinance requirements, it's not going to have to go, it wouldn't go to the zoning board of appeals.
Thank you. The reason I bring this up is that these discussions have come up many times over the years in various ways. And one concern I always had was that we have a one approach fits all kind of scenario where I don't know if every single situation always has been beneficial to have a service drive connections. There have been cases where there were landscaping or unique features, and there was questions about whether or not there really was linkages between the properties that even made sense. That people would be driving from one to the other, or just basically making sure that there was a road system all the way through that was an alternative to Grand River. And sometimes you have to question if that's really was desirable, because as we were trying to do a form of new urbanism, and the whole goal is to move buildings up front closer and moving and keeping the whole back area being what it is, it sort of slightly contradicts that by creating more auto-centric and less green space and more imperviousness, all goals that we really don't want. And so I question sometimes the philosophy that we have to have complete service lanes all the way through all interconnecting businesses. Sometimes I think it really does make sense. There are natural things that flow between certain strip malls and banks and foods and things. It certainly makes sense. But other times, I'm not so sure it makes sense. And in the case of a provisioning center, it makes me question, based on some of the concerns people had, that this is one of those cases where, for me, it seems that having one entrance in and out seems to fit some of the concerns that some people might have had, rather than having a whole driveway, a roadway through it. Again, it's just one of those things that I think is worthy of a conversation, or whether there's an idea that we always have to have this service lane constantly all along Grand River, regardless of any uses along the way.
I will make comment that on the south side of Grand River, I often use the fact that I don't have to go out onto Grand River. I think I've been in communities where on major highways like Grand River, these kind of drives have been required, and they can still urbanize, so to speak, by having the buildings come up to where the service drive is. And that becomes sort of a lower speed secondary road in a way, because a lot of times you just have trouble getting out onto the major highway, or you just don't want to deal with the getting out there to come back in again. So I'm not sure we need to change our ordinance, but in any event, right now this is required. The stuff will be put in, and we'll talk to Sparrow about what can happen. Mr. Deshane.
I believe much of the focus of the Corridor Improvement Authority is to help foster those kinds of sub-avenues running in parallel as well, to reduce traffic and in some ways to make it more accessible from within. I noticed this is 2.4 acres. That's about 104,000 square feet. Yet the property mark is only about 5,000 square feet. this is a long, narrow parcel. If I saw the site plan, I've forgotten it. Can you give me an idea where on this long rectangular parcel the property is going to sit? In the middle, towards the front, towards the back?
The building? You mean
The building.
The building will be up to the front, closer to Grand River. The one thing, if you have the site plan there, you'll see the two wetlands. One is fairly close to the parking area. It meets the setback. And then there's one further to the north of that piece. So that back piece is a little bit harder to use.
All right, thank you. I do like this project in that this proposal in that it's a new construction project along our areas where we are trying to encourage commercial development, infill development. One of my fears of the medical marijuana ordinance is we'd be cannibalizing a lot of existing properties so that a lottery winner might win somewhere else in that overlay area and buy out someone who's got an existing business. And so we're just replacing one business with another business. In this case, rather than a zero-sum game, we're adding to our core commercial areas here, this sub area. So for that reason, I like the proposal.
Mr. Opsmer.
So a question for the applicant. Have any trees been removed on the site?
No trees have been removed on the site as of yet. Only the trees that were removed by DP Fox when they demolished their building, the current house on the property, but no trees have been demolished since we've had it.
Okay. I just heard something counter to that, so I just wanted to double check. I have no concerns with the project. I do support the service drive unless the elevations between the parcels are completely unworkable without, extensive soil work. Those service drive connections are important. And then I would just say to Treasurer DeShane's point on having this parcel being an undeveloped parcel, these were two parcels that, we amended the zoning overlay district to include them for that very reason. And so I was actually happy to see that one of the two parcels on Grand River that we added here was the winning applicant.
Anyone else? See any other hands? All right, well, then we'll have to put this on the agenda. It sounds to me like it's going to be for approval next time.
Yes.
Everybody shaking their head no? All right. I'll have it on for action. When we next meet, whatever that's going to be, sometime next month. We'll talk about that later. I'm moving on to C, 13C, zoning amendment number 20020, Township Board, the mobile family zoning districts.
Yes, this is an amendment to our zoning ordinance. There was discussion that back in November of last year to look at allowing single family detached units as part of a multiple family project. So what we did staff wise is went through, we didn't make large change to this. We tried to fit in the single family detached into the 4 multiple family zoning categories that we have. We did, as you'll see, put a limit on the number of single family units that could be part of a multiple family project. So no more than 50% of the units in a multiple family project could be this single family detached. The issue, we wanted to make sure that this ordinance as it's being proposed overshadowed or changed the use of our planned unit development. This ordinance under multifamily is going to give a higher density than it would normally under our planned unit development. So we didn't want somebody just not using the planned unit development or this ordinance to replace it. So we wanted to keep it at 50%. And the board can look at that if they think there should be changes to that. And then mostly we updated and made some corrections to some errors in the ordinance or changes to the ordinance to clarify things. We left most things, as I said, the same. The one thing we did, the distance between multiple family buildings is now 25. The distance between single family detached units would be 10 feet. And then we allowed the buildings to be a little bit closer to the street or a parking area and moved that from 25 to 20. We changed the overall size of parking space to be consistent with the rest of our zoning ordinance to 180 square feet. So overall, we didn't do a lot of changes to the ordinance other than allowing it in these multiple family zoning districts. Township attorney did review it and was okay with the changes. The planning commission held a public hearing and they recommended approval of the language that you have before you.
Okay, discussion time. Yes, Mr. Robson.
Mark, can you just remind us which, in order to do an MUPUD, what are the possible zonings for the property?
Well, you can do plan unit development in any zoning district. The majority of the ones that we see them in are the single family districts. The one thing difference, with the plan unit development, 50% of the developable area has to remain as open space. And in the multiple family, it's just 35% of the land area is open space. So it's quite a drastic difference. When we were looking at this, that's again why I said we put a limit on the number of units. We didn't want somebody going through rezoning multiple family, do a project with single family where it could have been done as a planned unit development.
Okay, so any residential zoning category, someone can apply to do an MUPUD.
Right. But density is based on the underlying zoning, and they can do a mix of housing units in a planned unit development.
Where have we had any projects that were done through an MUPUD on a residential zoning category? Can you give us some examples?
Well, the more recent ones was the Mayberry project on the north side of Bennett. That's going to be a planned unit development. I mean, the rezoning, it was conditioned on, you sort of saw what that one looked like.
Yeah, that's a PUD.
And the one there, Copper Creek.
Those are PUDs.
Those are planned unit, yeah.
Have we had MUPUD?
Can I clarify?
Not mixed use. I'm sorry if I said mixed use, I was wrong. It's just planned unit development.
Okay. Does that help?
Can you do a mixed use on residentially zoned properties?
Just planned unit development. I'm sorry, again, forget mixed use. I made a mistake if I did say that. Planned unit developments are allowed in any residential zoning district. So whether it's single family or multiple family, it's allowed by board approval.
Okay, I'm just confused how the MUPUD could be used to cannibalize the PUD process and part of our zoning ordinance if they would still have to get a rezoning. Like you couldn't just go and turn one of our conventional neighborhoods into a high density single family neighborhood using this, because you'd have to rezone it to something to do an MUPUD, correct?
You'd have to, if you had single family and wanted to do a multiple family project, yes, you'd have to rezone it.
To commercial or?
No, just to one of the four categories that we have RDD is 5 units per acres, RD is 8, RC is 14, and RCC is 34. This amendment only applies to properties that are currently zoned multiple family. Not that somebody couldn't go in and rezone something to multiple family.
Okay.
To use this ordinance. Or property that's existingly zoned multifamily may want to redevelop under this section. But what this ordinance is doing is allowing for single family detached units as part of that development in at RC, which is typically what's being requested, that's 14 units to an acre. What our suggestion is that if you had 10 acres, that's 140 units, that half of those units could only be developed for the detached single family. And that the other half would be multiple family. The idea is you're not just going to take a piece of property that's zoned multiple family and use this ordinance at like RC at 14 units to acre and only develop detached single units.
Okay, my only thought is, would that be the worst thing in the world? I mean, it would reduce the, I mean, if we've zoned it for 5 to 14 units per acre, and they decide to build that, I don't think anyone actually would, but I'm just making sure we covered our bases. When we initiated this, you know, I thought it was a no-brainer, but the talk of this to the MUPUD cannibalizing the PUD just got me startled for a minute, and so I just wanted to make sure we were safe. So.
Well, yeah, I think what the issue that we've seen is when somebody comes in to do the mixed use, the MUPD, that it's a token commercial area they provide. And really, they're looking at the multiple family, the apartments as the main focus of the project. And what you've seen in the Newton Point project and what we saw sort of a concept plan for what's being called the Grand Reserve off Grand River is that they truly want to do a multiple family project. They don't really want to foresee the commercial in these areas. So this was an alternative. Instead of doing the mixed use plan unit development, here's something that's allowed in multiple family that will allow you to do the detached single family as part of it without the commercial component.
Yeah, I'm fine with the way it's drafted. So I just wanted to double check that one comparison kind of startled me. So I'm good.
Yeah.
Mr. Dreyfus. You're muted again, Brett.
Thank you. Steve came in, IT came in and just told me to keep mine muted because it could be picking up stuff nearby. So, you know, I was a little confused on this ordinance proposal in the past. I remember I asked some questions because I really didn't understand it, and then it was clarified to me. I had MUPUD concerns from the very beginning about this, but it was pointed out that this was just an option to allow single-family homes in areas that we couldn't have them. So right on the surface, I thought that was a very good thing. What I'm hearing right now, I'm still in favor of this because it doesn't seem to cause any harm, in my opinion, or any loss of quality of life. But I think this doesn't, to me, I don't understand this because I don't think any developer is going to use it, because all we get is if there's a multifamily scenario, they're really going to make more money and do better overall. It seems time and time again by having the multifamily. They really don't want the single family. In fact, that's one of the conflicting points that comes up in our discussions and about doing a rezoning and things like that is, shouldn't this really be single family homes in the first place? And so I don't understand why a developer who really wants to do a multifamily high density thing because it's really the most profitable and doesn't want to do commercial really would really want to just put in some single family homes as an alternative. That to me, I haven't seen anything like that kind of a concept come along, but maybe I'm mistaken and it is or whatever, but I haven't really sort of experienced that proposal.
It's for Newton Point. Newton Point, DTN wants to do it. So this would allow them.
Okay, so we have somebody who's actually interested.
Yeah, were those going to be rental homes?
Yes, that's the new concept is providing an alternative. Instead of someone going into a multiple family building, they can rent the single family detached unit and have that same convenience as being on the site as the other multiple family.
Right. To me, as a, you know, if I can conclude my comments, now it's specifically about Newton too. Yes, I like the idea at Newton to be able to give them the opportunity to put in some single family rental houses that could be affordable, sort of a pathway to home ownership, not exactly, but sort of in a direction, I suppose, sort of like that. But there were really issues and problems the way that whole MUPUD came about, including a complete lack of real emphasis and concern on commercial and how it really abuts the other development to the south and the concerns about how that all played out. And so it really does raise, again, issues. It's very complicated. It's not just any one thing. I think single family homes for rentals in that area is good. And if this ordinance allows that component to occur, that's a good thing generally.
Yes, Ms. Wood.
I would concur with trustee Obsmer and Dreyfus. You made some good points too. I think the way I look at those single family units on a multifamily, especially at Newton, a multifamily property, is it increases the diversity because it allows for that zero entry for some of our elder population, and or it allows for maybe small families and still allows for like their own type of yard. Because I remember there was some yard, and you mentioned the setbacks, Brett, in the back of those units. So I like the fact that it increases the diversity of the housing units, makes them affordable, but also increases the diversity of the folks that are going to be living there. So as I understand it, I would be in support unless I heard differently.
Yes, Mr. Duchesne.
I too support this change. I think we are going to see a more diverse rental communities such as DTN is proposing. And in this case, we got to trust the market. We got to trust the developers. They've done the research on these projects. They know what the consumer is asking for now. It is unique to have single family standalone homes on a multifamily project like this. But we've seen the site plan, we've approved it, given the tentative go ahead and the zoning allows for it. I think with the changes to the tax law and the changes overall in our community, we're going to be seeing more and more of these high-end rental communities coming before us. And this ordinance will allow for that.
Okay, we're looking to see if we can build a consensus around this proposal. Sounds so far like things are going in that direction. Does anybody have anything negative they want to say at this point? Mrs. Jackson, you often have good thoughts on proposals like this. Anything either way?
I actually approve of the changes made in the ordinances here, and primarily for the diversity of housing types in a region, in an area. In my mind, it also helps us manage density better on large pieces of land. And so I'm inclined to support the adoption of this amendment.
I think we have a consensus to have this back for discussion, not for action. And of course, we'll discuss it at the time. Was that a hand from our manager? Just wave at me.
Yes. We'll have it ready.
Okay. All righty. We'll go to our next item, which is medical marijuana ordinance amendment.
Yeah. This amendment is to the non-zoning portion of the ordinance for medical marijuana. Now that we went through the lottery process and we've started processing special use permit applications for medical marijuana uses, we recognize there's some need for updating and changing some issues that have come up through that process. And the township attorney went through and made some suggestions to us that we've incorporated for you to consideration. Matt Cushel is here listening and can answer questions for you regarding the proposed amendment. I can just briefly walk through them for you real quick.
Okay, why
The
don't
first
we do
one,
it, walk through the by summarizing it. Go ahead.
the first one is what happens to these folks that are drawn in the lottery, but they weren't selected first? How long does that lottery list have to be maintained? And are we going to draw another lottery and have a second list? So the purpose of this is that there would be an expiration date of 1 year from the lottery, so that somebody is not sitting out there waiting on this list forever, possibly to get in line to get a facility started. The other one is the timing, because once you're drawn for the lottery, you have 60 days to submit the special use permit application. After that, somebody submits it in that 60-day period, but there's deficiencies. There's things that need to be corrected. The ordinance didn't speak to how long somebody had to return the application and make those corrections. And what was being proposed now is that 30 days. So the staff would get the application in within that first 60 days. We would go through it. We'd notify the applicant of the deficiencies. They have 30 days after that notification to make those corrections and get them back to us. And in the bottom, if you have your staff report at the bottom of the first page and on to page 2, there's a time frame, and you'll see how it's laid out that this process with the revisions would work through. So again, Matt's here for any questions. I know Peter's listening to this too, and he can answer any questions on this.
Mr. Oxford.
So Matt, I have a few questions. So are all of these changes prospective, or are any retroactive?
These would be prospective only.
Okay. And so we're changing the timeline that we had in place. The ordinance, as it was originally adopted, required facilities to become operational effectively within 1 year of winning the permit through the lottery, correct?
Correct.
And so we are changing that to be 1 year from when?
So there's
Go
ahead,
Mark. Okay, you both can't talk. Mark, you first.
All right, I'll go first. One of the difficulties is the special use permit, once granted, our ordinance says it's valid for 2 years. And in the issue with construction, especially just what we were talking about for this Grand Riverside brand new building, they go through site plan review, they've got to get building permits, they've got to get all their other approval. And if they run into any difficulties through that time, as we're seeing now, they could be delayed. So what is under consideration is that they have to each year renew their application for the medical marijuana. And if they are not making progress, staff can not or deny the renewal of the application. So if somebody is taking more time and not actively or diligently trying to pursue to get this done, we have the ability to not renew their application.
But in terms of the black and white timelines that are in there, for the new construction, when there's no building on site, the amendments provide that you have to start construction within 1 year of obtaining your special use permit, I believe, correct?
Correct.
So they just have to put the very first permanent construction in place. And so if it's a site where there's already a building, and they're not doing new construction, how long do they have to become operational from the time that they win the lottery or get their special use permit? What's that timeline?
So there isn't a hard timeline for something like that. I would say it works in a couple different ways. Mainly, you still have your SUP 2-year kind of option, but what's going to happen is they're going to have to come up for a renewal application, and that is going to be that's going to be no later than 1 year after the lottery occurred. So it depends, that which may be 6 months after they are granted their SUP, they might have to renew their application.
Yeah.
And the township then has an opportunity then to say, look, you have a building that's here in place. What are the problems that are holding you up? You know, are you diligently attempting to open or not? And be able to assess it at that time.
Discretionarily view it through that lens.
Correct.
Through the renewal process, but presumably someone could get the special use permit and sit on it for 2 years if we granted the renewal extensions.
Potentially. If there are problems with the site that legitimately justify a renewal permit, really you're probably more 1.5 years. You could say outwards of 2 years.
Okay, so that brings me to item 4 on page 7. Now that I've clarified that, I don't understand why we're going to continue drawing why our lotteries are going to expire before those timelines play out. We get back into the same issue where someone wins the 2nd or 3rd place in a lottery, is watching their, competition within that overlay district flounder and wondering, when they're going to get it. But my reading of this is we only allow that lottery to exist for 1 year.
Correct. And
so the
challenge is
not the renewal yet.
Sounds like an inconsistency.
Well, it's not an inconsistency so much as a policy decision. When we think about new businesses opening, we don't think about them sitting and not taking advantage of commercial real estate and getting revenue dollars coming in, right? So whether someone's really going to sit on something for a period of time is something we don't typically think is going to happen that often, but
we are talking about this happening presently.
Well, as drafted, and the intent, our understanding was, as we put together how the lottery would function, would be that there was always an intent that the lottery results don't last forever. And a renewal application would have to be submitted at least 90 days before that 1 year deadline. And then we have the timelines on the SUP process. So there would be ways for the township to be able to assess whether or not an applicant who has successfully been drawn in the lottery submitted a valid SUP permit, if they have or have not, to move that along. And then if you're then coming up to the renewal timeline, what's happened throughout those course of events, and is renewal contemplated?
Okay.
But as I did say at the outset, it is a policy decision. There isn't, there would be ways to accommodate different timelines, have lotteries that function in a different way. But, as you can tell, those are big changes and something we didn't want to try and craft without board input.
Okay. So just for background for my fellow board members, I was part of an original meeting because I had flagged the special use permit application issue. Basically, when we created our ordinance, we had an oversight, and that's what kind of spawned all this. It was determined that we had no timeline in place for correcting deficiencies under a special use permit, which makes sense because when, if Meyer wants to put in a drive-through window for their pharmacy, they have a business interest in getting that window in, they'll correct the deficiencies, and we would move forward. In this instance, because it's an industry that deals with overlay districts and finite permits, some applicants, one in our community at least, and other applicants in other communities will sit on the permit because it is a very finite resource, and not do anything. And I know we have at least one in our community that is currently doing that. So that was the original thing that needed to be addressed, was to create some kind of time frame in which deficiencies for the special use permit have to be addressed. We actually did that for the original application. When you applied for the lottery, we said if your application was deficient, you had 5 days to correct it. We put that in the ordinance. Basically, when we chose to implement the special use permit, we didn't really review it to see if it would work because it was already an established process. We kind of had an oversight. And then from that, we found that we had a meeting and it was determined that our original lottery, which occurred on September 23rd, expired due to a provision in the ordinance that said the lotteries expire on December 31st of every year. Yet we also had a provision that the board put into the ordinance that said you have to become operational within a year. So the board put that in to make sure that people didn't sit on this indefinitely. But yet the lottery expired prior to that 1 year window ever taking effect. So the second, third, fourth, and fifth place, applicants within overlays will never have any shot at winning. So my thought on this is that we've got to do something more definitive. If we treat the special use permit process differently and not grant 2 years under these sections of our zoning ordinance that apply to medical marijuana, I think that would be a good approach, because giving people a time window in which to commence construction is fine. Then they're committed, they've got their financing, but giving people indefinite time frame to commence construction or to get operational concerns me, because if someone's applying for a renewal right before their 1 year is up, then there's going to be a second place applicant who is also chomping at the bit for them not to be renewed. And we're going to constantly be putting these conflict points of choosing between the two in effect of whether or not we grant the renewal. Like, I'd rather see a black and white approach of you either commenced construction or you didn't. You either opened or you didn't within a certain time frame. Part of the problem that we have now is we have at least one applicant who has no shot. They're not even very far along in their special use permit process, and they need to do a new build. So there's no way they're going to build it. Build the building by now, and they're aware of that. So, but yet they're not conceding, the permit. No one's ever going to concede these permits because they're a very valuable resource. What I've been told is people can lend against the permits. Some lending institutions will actually view them as an asset for prospective revenue. But so I'd like to see something definitive, and I'd like to see the lottery. One of the two things happen with the lottery for sure. We either should only draw one winner and not draw subsequent, second, third, fourth, fifth, et cetera, placement, or we should allow it to exist beyond this date certain in which a facility either commences construction or opens its doors to business.
Mr. Dreyfus, you're muted again.
I thought Trustee Opson made some very good points. You raised some good concerns. I would posit that this is an industry with changing circumstances. And as a result, a list that's more than a year old may not be all that great in terms of keeping things active for that long, because I don't know what the conditions and circumstances of applicants are after a year. In another industry, it may not be as significant, but in this particular one, it's a lot of new players coming in, tenuous capital sources at times maybe, and various, we know, leasehold issues and things that come up. So I'm not so keen on extending out long-term lists in this type of industry. I do like the idea of using performance bonds for various projects and things, which I know we use in all sorts of other applications. Mark, this is just kind of a question throwing out here. Is there any way to implement some sort of performance bonds where if an applicant didn't do certain things at certain times, they would forfeit a bond? Let's say it was a $10,000 bond that you need to do X milestone in this process. Another $10,000 bond is required for another 25% along the process. And if they don't meet certain goals along the ways, they forfeit their performance bond.
We don't have anything currently in the ordinance where someone would forfeit like that if they didn't do something. What we do on performance guarantees, certainly some businesses, open during the winter months, they don't have all their landscaping done because of that. So we'll take a performance guarantee for the amount of landscaping that isn't done, assuming that it's going to be done in spring. What the performance guarantee in that sense gives us the ability, if they don't do it, we'll go in and install the landscaping. That kind of, we haven't had any where they forfeited it. They lost money as part of it.
I brought this issue up in some unrelated topic, I remember a couple of years ago, because I had read an article about some municipalities were using, various forms of these performance guarantees or performance bonds to try to help ensure compliance. To note some of the concerns that Trustee Opsimer has about the value of holding on to these things for a long period of time. What I would argue is that if you create time not as an asset, like Trustee Opsimer is referring to, but make time sort of a costly thing for them. So it's almost like if they don't do certain things, it's going to cost them money along the way. And they could still move forward, but it's going to start eating up money, so that they're going to really have a high level incentive to keep the timetable that was proposed. Is this something that we can look into as a concept about expanding the concept of performance bonds? I guess I'm going to ask that as a question. Is that something that it'd be worth looking into as a possible course of action?
That's for Matt or Mark.
Yeah, we can. Maybe Matt has maybe Matt knows of an example.
So unfortunately, no, I don't have any good examples off the top of my head on something like that, but certainly it's something we could look at.
Anyone else have anything you want to bring up on this? It seems like we're going to have to do some massaging here before this back for action. Yes, Mr. Opsimer.
So I did have one more thing that I just wanted to have Matt walk through, which is on page 10 at the bottom, item 4B. Matt, if you could just clarify, given at least the circumstance that we know of in the township right now. So we have an LLC, which may have one to many different partners on it. They've applied for a specific site that was not developable. Then they tried to transition their permit to a new site, which is not authorized under our ordinance. So what we're trying to do is block them from reapplying and trying to game the system and put more balls into the lottery bin again. So my reading of this, it's not clear to me that if that LLC applies and just drops a member or two or three, could they still apply for that redraw of the lottery? As if to make that really specific. So say there's 4 gentlemen, 3 of them drop off, but one of them stays. Is that considered a new applicant or not? It doesn't read to me black and white that that's a new applicant or the same applicant.
Right. So
the same applicant. If it's a partnership, it's not. Matt, would you agree with it?
I would say it's the same applicant if they're, well, there's a couple different moving parts. That's going to be a new applicant. I think that's going to be the short answer. And that provision that you're looking at there, Dan, is the non-renewal. So they wouldn't be able to renew the winning position they had. If we're talking about a reconfiguration of owners submitting a new application for a subsequent lottery, we would still vet that application. And one of the other points of language we're adding, it's on page 3, I think, is that any members who are part of an LLC or a partnership who have made applications in the past have to disclose all those applications and any outcomes. So there would be an ability to vet, whether something is really a proper applicant given their history.
Okay. So I don't think that's strong enough either, because if you've got 3 partners on it and all they have to do is remove the third partner, apply again for the same defunct site, and potentially cause us the same headache on the exact same parcel number or address, and tie this up for another 1 year or 2 years, depending on how we craft this, that's a problem. So my original recommendation, which I still think is the right approach, is if any of the applicants or if any of the partners or owners or directors or officers, you've got the list there in item 10 on page 3. If there isn't universal change there where it's 100% different ownership, then they should not be able to reapply on the same address or parcel. They can reapply for a new site. If they go out and vet a new property interest, that's fine. But if they just drop one person off the LLC for a minute and reapply on a defunct site, like that's just causing us to repeat the same headache. And it's almost just, we can't allow that there's just no policy rationale to allow that. We've got to prevent that from happening. If we just want to take the parcel number, or we could just say that no one can apply for that parcel, because they didn't make, well, I guess sometimes it might be developable and they failed because of financing or other reasons. In this case, we believe that it just costs too much to redevelop that site. So, I mean, I guess my point stands. Like, we need to look at the ownership, and if there's any of the same partners, owners, directors on the application, they should be out. It should have to be 100% different ownership.
So Dan, I don't think I was clear. We can currently deny that application if they drop 3 out of 4.
But it's not required. Like, I think it should be required, because why would we accept them on the same defunct site? Why do we want to run the risk that they would win the lottery?
Because, well, there might be changes within that entity, like you just mentioned about financing or something, that, if there was a problem with the previous LLC and the way it was constituted more than the site, and that's what hung it up, then maybe how that applicant is changing, that's why you have a bit of discretion there, is to make sure you can respond to unique facts as they come forward, rather than being required to take a certain action.
We're just trying to, in my opinion, from a public policy standpoint, we created 6 overlays that are geographically dispersed across the community. We've allocated one permit per overlay. We're just trying to get geographic coverage so that patients have access. And like the likelihood of, so if they have a whole year to bring in financing and stuff and fail to do it, the likelihood that we accept them again, they happen to win the lottery, and they somehow conduct business drastically different, that second time around is very limited. I mean,
But you don't have to accept them again. The language there states that the director may deny any renewal application or subsequent applications submitted by the applicant, so that's an LLC or a partnership, or any individual that had any interest within that previous applicant. So if I apply with, Chris Patterson and we say Cushell's Weed LLC, and then I have a great idea. I'll just have Chris Patterson drop off and I'll apply for myself. Mark would be able to say, hey, no, Matt, I see what you're doing there. You're trying to play games with your LLCs. Your application is denied. And he can point at that paragraph in my failure to diligently pursue operations under my first application.
Hypothetically, though, we've gone through so hypothetically, they would have applied under this hypothetical scenario. This isn't hypothetical, just the scenario. They would have applied for an extension or a renewal, as we phrase it. So we would have just denied their renewal, and then we're going to let them reapply, basically, and to have discretion. But we already exercised our discretion by denying their renewal.
You would deny both, and then if they come back and submit a new application, you can deny that.
I just worry about. I don't worry about the discretion of our staff at all. I just worry about like it being written so permissively that the intent is not very clear in the ordinance. It gets lost over time, and it's a huge folly because it costs a lot of time and energy, and other people get upset that didn't.
Sure. Can you point me more directly to the language so that I can, maybe think about that more concretely?
Yeah, just basically if any, my advice would be if any owner, partner, director, officer, or manager of the applicant, or if you can think of any other terminology that you already use there, is the same on an application for the same parcel number or address, they should just overtly be denied the right to re-enter on a second or subsequent lottery. You don't get a second crack at the apple.
Right.
And it's got to be tied to ownership because, most of these entities created a separate LLC for every single application. So all it takes is $50 and a little bit of paperwork with Laura to create an LLC. So it's got to be tied to the persons associated with that and the parcel number or address.
Does anyone else have any issues with the draft? Matt and Mark, are you getting what Dan is after?
My only final thought would be, I just think from an intent standpoint, 18 months would be a lot of time to either commence construction or operate. I think that's a terrible amount of time. And if they can't do it, we've got to move on. It's not the same market. It's not like, if Meyer isn't opening, their competitors are coming in. In Michigan, we have this wholly unique industry where they can only do business with this one product, medical marijuana. There's a finite number of permits and they're geographically dispersed. The market doesn't self-correct. We're governing the market here. So we should govern it strictly based on that reality. So that would be my only thought. I would support 12 months to either commence construction or I fully support 12 months for commencing construction or operating, getting operational if there's already a building on site. But in the event, if staff really feel like we should go longer, I think 18 months is okay. And I think the lottery should last be a somewhat meaningful time beyond that. I can tell you to Clerk Dreyfus's point that people are still paying options on properties in this overlay, the Hobby Lobby overlay, because of the uncertainty around the applicant who won. They're not stupid. So people are still paying monthly or annual options to have the right to purchase their properties. They see that we have to do something. they're going to watch any overlay where this happens. So it's perfectly fine to let a lottery survive for 2 years if we have to, so that the second applicant can actually have a chance at opening there. But if we don't want to do that, which I think we should, I think it's efficient for our staff to hold as few lotteries as possible. But if we want to make Mark and Peter hold more lotteries, which I think is foolish, we shouldn't draw a second, third, fourth place in any of the lotteries because they have no shot at getting it. It's completely bizarre to do that.
Okay, does anyone else have any concerns or interest in this? And then we'll have another draft come to us. Mark?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Ron, I think Phil had his hand up. You might not be able to see.
Phil's on a different screen now.
I just wanted to say that I agree that something has to be done here. And I think this whole discussion points out to unforeseen scenario that someone who would have a winning parcel ability to develop and then sit on it purposefully. And those who think we allowed medical marijuana to make money off of it, this belies the whole thing. We've had really high legal bills the past couple of years, and we've had legal counsel sit in this whole meeting. This has been a very expensive process, not to mention the extreme amount of staff time that's been involved in this whole process. We haven't gotten to the enforcement and regulation side of it because none of these facilities are open. So this is not going to be a moneymaker for the township. We're doing it because of a medical need, not because it's a revenue source. So, but I agree, we need to do something to the ordinance to keep this kind of stalling, if you will, from continuing.
I can say I'm very familiar with this kind of a situation because when it comes to hospitals and various medical devices, et cetera, certificate need laws, people will sit on them. That's why they expire after a certain time, usually a year, for that reason, because there's you don't think of it ahead of time, but they come up with a financial event. And that's what we've got here. So making these changes is important. So we'll get another draft, take a look at it, see if we can get to where we need to get. Oh, Ms. Jackson, yeah.
Yes, I'd just like to add to the conversation that I'm totally unfamiliar with what's going on, what we're talking about. And so I certainly need to hear more discussion and more information about the issue that's being talked about here.
I'm happy to speak, Pat, after the meeting too, or we can have a call to talk it over, and Matt and Peter and Mark are also pretty apprised and get more background from.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so this will be back for discussion. Last thing we have on here is prevailing wages. We have a proposed resolution, a policy of prevailing wages. And it was actually proposed to us, although we've talked about it for years, and we've had an informal policy back when we did the fire station. I was on the board at the time, not supervisor, but we pushed to have prevailing wages there, and were successful. The township ended up requiring that in that project. But this would formalize that, and Dan has proposed it. So Dan, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The board policy itself. So this is basically us adopting a policy that gives staff guidance on how we want this handled in every situation, not just handling it on a case-by-case basis, as the township has done in perpetuity. But I modeled it after East Lansing's ordinance. They adopted it in 1976. Many issues, including human rights and LGBTQ equality, were four centuries behind, or 4 decades behind them. We did increase, I worked with Ron on this, and so we did increase the threshold of which projects would be subject to the policy. East Lansing's policy, which has never been amended, was 20,000. We increased it to 50,000, just to be more reflective of inflation and the scale of project in today's environment. But as you saw tonight on the HVAC, every single one of the contractors would have received, would have fallen under the board policy. And tonight's was actually pretty unique because it's an HVAC project. It's almost exclusively mechanical. The electrical, most projects would not be that heavily tilted to one trade or another. The only thing I would mention is that today, Prevailing Wage has a very unique history if you read up on it, and its origins back in the late 19th century and 1930s when the federal prevailing wage law was enacted. Back then it was much more due to racism and trying to, white communities trying to prevent minority contractors from underbidding them. Today it operates geographically. So if everybody remembers when Skyview was constructed, the local building trades were protesting out on Michigan Avenue. The reason being was that if you went into the parking lot there, all of the plates were from Indiana and Ohio, and effectively the contractor had hired non-union labor, non-local labor from more depressed economic areas where people are willing to work for less, essentially. And what it meant was all that labor cost on that site basically went straight down to Indiana. And so today it functions much more geographically. It's to protect, our workers here in the Ingham County region that have a higher, we have a higher regional pay than many other parts of the state and also many adjacent states. So that's effectively the policy and a little bit of background.
Anybody want to comment on the policy or question it? Ms. Jackson.
I would support this solid policy for the township as presented to us with the elevated project size costs.
Mr. Shane.
Yes, I would support this as well. We don't want to see another Skyview here, certainly not one in Meridian Township where out of area non-union labor is brought in while we've got plenty of very skilled, very capable union laborers that could do that work and should do that work for a local project. This makes sense. We should have likely adopted this years ago, but better late than never. I thank Trustee Opsimer for bringing this before the board and for our review, but I look forward to us adopting this very soon.
Ms. Wazinski.
So I do support this as well, and thank you for the history, Trustee Opsimer, because being in a construction trade for quite some time, I go back and forth. I understand the fact that we want to keep it local, but I also can sympathize with those very small construction companies that can't necessarily afford to compete with some of those bigger companies that can afford to pay the prevailing wage, which brings me to the project cost and project size. I think that's a pretty important part for me. So if it's less than 50,000, we still have an opportunity to allow some of those smaller businesses to compete. So I do support it, and I thank you for the background.
Checking the other screen. Is that a hand up? No. Okay. Are the other hands up? I don't see any. All right, then we'll have this back for act. We now come to comments for the public, and I don't think there's any public left. They have a chance to call in, actually, don't they?
We do have a chance for the public to call in again. The number's 517-349-1232. And we'll wait for about 90 seconds just to see if we have any callers. And I can hear somebody calling right now. So Supervisor Steichen, I'm going to let you give your spiel about what public comment is for while I get the person on the line.
Well, I don't really want to spend a lot of time. I'll just say that there's 3 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some good comments coming in. They need to identify themselves, etc. Do you still have somebody coming in, Steve?
We have a caller coming in right now. Please state your name for the record and your address.
Joyce Vancouvering, 5882 Alchemist Road.
Do they have some background in the back?
Yeah, it sounds like we're getting a little bit of feedback. Joyce, if you can turn down the meeting a little bit or turn it off or move to another room, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And then I'll need your name
Joyce
again.
Vancouvering, 5882 Alchemist Road.
Very good.
Go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes to comment.
Okay. I just wanted to publicly thank the board as well as the leadership in the township, Frank, and your M team during this really, really challenging time we're having. And it just makes me proud to be a citizen in Meridian Township. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Vancouver.
Thanks, Ms. Vancouvering, and have a good evening. Please stay safe.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have no, I'm sorry, we have no other callers at this time.
Okay. If we have no other callers, do you have anything else from board? Mr. DeShane.
Yes. This is a very different time. This meeting format being unique to us, our first time, really reflects the fact that the world has changed a lot in the past 30 days, and we don't know how long this change is going to last. It's certainly not going to go back to normal anytime soon. And it's going to make a big economic impact on a lot of our residents. We do have a great program, Meridian Cares, that's meant to be a safety net of sorts for our residents who lose jobs, laid off, need help with rent, utilities, and other essentials like that, or food. And Darla Jackson does an excellent job with that. And our community service and referral, our CRC commission manages that process for us. I reached out to Darla to ask her what she has seen in terms of need the past 2 weeks. And she said there has not yet been a spike in demand for services. It's been a little above normal, but not markedly. But they're expecting that to be. It's going to be like a tidal wave that once it comes through, and once the short-term help expires, they're expecting a lot of people who are going to have problems with rent. People in the service industry, which has been devastated by this, that will be needing help soon. So Meridian Cares is asking all of our residents, and particularly the board and commission members, to come forward, make a donation, even set up a system where you donate $50 a month for 12 months. And that makes a big difference to have another $600 in their coffers to help families out. So please keep community service and our CRC in mind. They do great work. 100% of the money goes directly to those in need. And we're going to see that need coming soon. And it'd be great if they've got significant money in reserve and that need hits, that they've got the resources to help our residents who are going to be facing hard times.
I apologize. This is my fault. I had my phone turned off. The manager actually wanted to be called on earlier. Mr. Walsh, do you still have anything to bring up?
Yeah, I just want to, this whole Zoom process has been new to us, as a couple of you have mentioned. And I don't want to leave this meeting without thanking, I've been here a lot in the last few days. And so has Stephen Givas. He's been here in the morning, he's been here in the afternoon, and he's been here in the evenings. And I just want to thank him and our communications team for putting this all together in short order.
I think you wanted to comment, though, on our prevailing wage item. It's not too late for you to do that if you want to.
Well, all I was going to say is that, when you go back to when the fire station, that discussion came up, and 2014, there was a struggle that went on in that whole discussion on whether we were going to go to prevailing wage, and been a lot of discussion with managers in the state. And I think what's really important in my position, I'm not a policymaker, but as a person in the managerial side, it's important that policy matches the community. And one thing I've learned here, if I had to go back in my position back in the fire station at prevailing wage, it's different today than it was 5 or 6 years ago. I think what's been presented tonight represents clearly where the township is, and I applaud the efforts of the board to get us there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Back to board member comments, Mr. Opsler.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one reference. Manager Walsh and Chief Hamill shared a lot of resources tonight. And forgive me if I missed it because it might have been shared, but I just wanted to make sure that residents that may still be with us know to visit michigan.gov/COVID-19 if they need resources, or whether it's unemployment or food assistance, access to free meals, or if they just want to volunteer. It's all kind of aggregated there. So that's the one-stop shop for everybody to visit, and it has a wealth of updates. Updates occur every 10 to 15 minutes. So just wanted to make sure that that was put out there for residents.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes, I'd like to represent the Meridian Township Census Complete Count Committee and remind everyone that tomorrow it's April the 1st, and to encourage everyone in the township to participate in the 2020 census, to know that on many, if not all of the township social media pages, there is information to inform and help you make sure that all of us are counted and participate in the 2020 census in spite of the pandemic.
And that's a very important message, right? Because a substantial part of our funding and programs and things depend on an accurate census, because we share in monies with other communities based on our population, whether it's federal or state. So it's important that everybody be counted, including students remember, who actually reside in Meridian Township for the majority of the year. The census defines the place you live as the one you predominantly reside in. For students, that ends up being usually where they are when they're in college, rather than their home back with mom and dad. So that's important. I want to mention a couple of things, and I'll call on others. The senior watch, it was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. I've been pushing it. I would hope that you all would. The people could sign up with the police department, and cadets will phone them periodically to make sure that they're okay, and then an officer will go out if they need assistance or if there's not answering their phone or something like that, so they're sure that they're okay. So it's a good program to keep our citizens safe. It's been around for a long time, but we need to expand it in these times where so many people are stuck in their houses. Often, seniors are not able to be with their children or grandchildren, and they could be forgotten. So sign up for the senior watch, or sign your mom or dad up for it if that's the situation. The other thing we need to talk about is our next meeting. I'm thinking that we probably should meet again this way, because I doubt we'll have any choice but to do it this way in April. Right now, we have 2 meetings scheduled in April, the 14th and 1st. I'm imagining we could probably get by with one of those, and I was wondering how the rest of the board members feel about it.
My question would be, do we need to meet on a regular schedule for approving the bills? So that would be a question for Manager Walsh as to, that's always been the concern in the past, and I don't know if we have protocols adapted given the changing circumstances.
Yeah, it's always helpful to have that meeting every 2 or 3 weeks for the bills. But going back, we went without a meeting for, I think, 5 or 6 weeks, maybe, I'm not sure.
No, 4 maybe.
4.
We've had
Been three. We had a meeting.
beginning of
March 3rd was our last meeting.
Okay,
3
so
weeks.
it's been 4
weeks.
4 weeks. So, okay, so it's been 4 weeks. So really, we had to basically make a decision either to not pay all of our businesses that we do business with or pay the bills. We made the decision just to pay the bills maybe 10 days ago. But yeah, it is helpful to have a routine meeting for that purpose. Otherwise, we'll be either paying a lot of interest or late fees, or we'll be just paying the bills.
because of the spring break, which would normally be there, which is probably we're not really there this year. We scheduled 14th and 21st, which are back to back. So I'm just thinking that maybe if we just did one of those, it would satisfy the need, leaving the bills, et cetera, and get more into the regular schedule with the May meetings. How do others feel? Yes, Dan.
I'm fine with meeting on a regular schedule. I thought this went much more smoothly tonight than I had anticipated just for a first go of it. So kudos to Stephen Geeves for making this be such a fluid experience for everybody.
That's true.
I think personally it just provides a sense of normalcy, and some things will pile up, and I don't know what decision staff will make now with the Planning Commission, but because this went so well, if the Planning Commission starts to meet again, our work is going to pile up, and I assume applicants will still try to complete any approvals that they have in the works.
You just reminded me of something I was going to say. I was thinking we could maybe do one in April because the Planning Commission had been meeting, but by that time we'll probably have them meeting, and then in May for sure we'll go back to the regular schedule. Yes, Mr. Duchesne.
Yeah, part of the reason we can do this meeting this way is that we have the iPads, and I know that we've thought about rolling out iPads to the Planning Commission, and if it's in the budget, I would encourage the manager to consider that and authorizing Stephen to do that so that they have the technology to have these remote meetings as we have. He obviously knows how to roll these out to board members and Planning Commission members. It's a good investment, and we should have a Planning Commission that's meeting regularly.
Ms. Wazinski, you had your hand a minute ago.
I just have some final thoughts. So I'm okay. I'm okay with whatever you decide about the meetings.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Jackson.
I agree with Mr. Ofsmer that if we go with our regularly scheduled, at least the first regularly scheduled meeting in April, then we should be able to begin to get back on track with our meetings at least.
All right, so I'm taking it from this that we're going to go with April 14th for sure.
Right.
Okay. So we will make sure all the notices are out, et cetera, for April 14th for a virtual meeting. Okay. And now other comments or final thoughts from people? Ms. Wazinski.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to take a moment to thank our Chief Hamill, Chief Plaga, and our manager for being so proactive during this time of a public health emergency and crisis in working for the State Health Department. We see it on our end as well, and we're in constant contact with our medical director, Dr. Joan A. Caldoun. But I just want to commend all of those in the community that are staying home as much as they possibly can. It truly does protect the rest of our residents, but most importantly, our first responders and our healthcare providers who are there all day, every day, being in the midst of exposure. And as Dr. Caldoun had stated in the last address from the governor, it might not seem like it's making a difference because we're going to see an increase in both tests as well as deaths, but it is going to make a difference in the long run. And it's just that lapse in data collection, data reporting. So just to ask all of our residents to stay healthy, stay safe, stay home as much as possible, and to thank all of you out there working so hard for us and our families.
Absolutely. Anyone else? I think we all support that. Okay, all right. So we need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
Moved by DeShane, supported by Jackson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we're adjourned.
Everybody have a good night.
We can't hear you, Brett. You still can't hear you. You're
I was just getting the time documented for adjournment.